Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Mike Calabrese, and today I'm joined by Duck and Stucky for our Mac extravaganza, so you know you're in great hands. For those not in the know, forget about the Calgorithm. If you want something for the people, tune into Mac Manifesto by our very own Stucky. He writes it up twice a year. It's going to be coming out soon on the Action app. He'll be pushing our editors to the absolute brink, probably a 10,000 word breakdown for his beloved conference end to end. And speaking of the Mac, I have a special note here from our intrepid producer Matt Mitchell. Do not let Stuck and Duck drone on forever. We got to keep this tight to 90 minutes end to end. All right, I got that message out of the way quick, no problem. We're going to hop in because this is the League of the Wagon Wheel, the Bronze Stalk Trophy, the Victory Cannon, the Battle of I-75, midweek Maction. We love this product as much as any sicko could. And for that reason, I think we're going to have to really kind of push the boundaries of how long we're going to talk about it. From a programming note, instead of going division by division, we don't have those anymore. We're just going to go teams at the top, followed by a team at the bottom. Team at the top, team at the bottom, because there's different ways to play these teams. There's going to be a squad in here with a win total of 1.5 that may end up getting a lot of action from our listeners because we think we're going under on them. So if you're listening in, make sure to catch those cues. We're going to go ahead and list the teams at the top, how they did last year, what they're returning. We're not just going to clump all the top teams at the top. All right, Stuck, I want to get you involved right away. This is a conference, obviously, that you grind on for the entire season. How early did your prep start on a league like this? And how confident do you feel that you really know who these teams are going to be in week 0 and week 1?
Mac is a year-round endeavor. The Mac never sleeps. So, yeah, I would say like a couple months ago started dabbling into the Mac. How well do I know these teams? I don't have a clue. I'm kidding. I feel semi-comfortable, but there's a lot of turnover, and the conference is getting worse overall. It's going to stay entertaining, but a lot of these teams get plucked for their coaches. Any good player ends up hitting the portal, just like a lot of these group of five schools. And then now this is the last year of NIU, and we're swapping out NIU for UMass. So the quality of the league is going down, but I think that there's a lot of variance across the board. These teams aren't that far apart, just from a talent perspective, which is why you could see something like last year when Ohio coming into the year, probably my worst call I've ever had doing the Mac Manifesto for, I don't know, 6, 7 years. I thought Ohio was going to be dreadful with everything that they lost, and they end up winning the league for the first time since, I don't know, 1963 or something. So I think there's some opportunities this year, a lot of turnover for maybe a team that no one's expecting to win this league to get to Detroit and maybe shock some people. So I have a couple looks in that regard, but it's a really fascinating league from really top to bottom, excluding Kent State. I can confidently say Kent State is going to be really bad.
Duck, I know you start your off-season win total research for the MAC in the early spring, if not as soon as the season's over with. Of this, you can kind of break this conference into 3 pods. You got about 4 teams who you feel pretty solid about their identity on both sides of the ball. They're going to vie for a conference championship. You got 3, 4, maybe 5 teams at the bottom that you're pretty convinced are not going to be able to get to bowl eligibility. And then you have that meaty middle, that middle class of the conference. Where do you look first targeting as the most ripe in terms of being able to cash some season win totals?
Well, like Stuck had alluded to, there's just so much transition now with 4,000 players entering the portal. The complexity of these teams changes so much year to year. We've got some coaching and some scheme changes within the confines of the MAC. And so I really try to just identify what these teams are going to try to look like from a power rating standpoint, see what the schedule looks like. Sometimes you can hit the MAC lottery as one of these teams did this year. We'll talk about it later, and you'll have a little bit of an easier path in MAC play compared to a team that's going to have to face Toledo, Miami of Ohio, Ohio University. Maybe you have those teams on the road. You can have an emerging team that plays a tough MAC schedule, and they just may not see it in the win column because of the treacherous slate. The MAC there's so much dichotomy top to bottom, and so you really have to analyze where these teams are playing and who they're playing in order to accurately assess the regular season wins, which were pretty sharp in MAC play this year, I might add.
All right, let's jump right into it. Toledo at the top of this conference, the Rockets, 8-5 last year, 4-4 in conference play. They win that six overtime thriller over Pitt in the bowl game. They're plus 220 to win this conference. Their win total sitting at 8.5. You're gonna have to lay minus 150 to go over that. Nine returning starters, five on offense, four on D, 48th in returning production. There are clear reasons to believe this will be the best offense in the MAC, if not one of the very best in the G5. Three starters return up front, 74% of their line starts. But last year, this group wasn't up to Rocket standards. 119th in line yards, 120th from a PFF run blocking perspective, and their backfield just didn't break enough tackles. So the question is, in terms of the run blocking, will it improve? On a pass blocking front, they did enough for them to lead the MAC 250 yards per game through the air. The running back room has been beefed up. Chip Trainum comes in. He could be in line for his heaviest workload of his collegiate career. He certainly has the skill and upside to be all MAC first team. And then they also bring in another running back in terms of Kenji Christian, who could be a major sleeper because when he was healthy at NC State, he had serious burst, started his career as a three-star recruit, and finally put all of that, potential to work for him at the FCS level, really breaking through. But let's get right to it. Tucker Gleason remains the Rorschach test for this team. If you look at him and say, hey, I see the offensive player of the year in this conference, you can make your case. If you remove sack yardage from his stats last year, he ran for 500 yards, seven TDs. They certainly won't be dialing up a ton of design runs, but when they do, he has no problem barreling over people and being a real threat inside, the 10-yard line. He's a mountain of a man at 6'3", 245, extends plays. He's the only group of five quarterback with 3,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, and 13 or fewer turnovers returning to his team this season. But like I said, you can look at the positive. You can look at what he did against Miss State, Miami, Pitt, accounting for three touchdowns against all of those teams. But then the Rorschach test goes the other way when you start looking at some of the games that he threw away a little bit. He couldn't get it together against Buffalo. He gets hurt. He threw, some pick sixes against Bowling Green, that ended up being an issue and costing them the game. The offense was stuck in the mud against Ohio. I put that at his feet. So will the upgrade in the running back room, the addition of Trayvon Rudolph on the perimeter, be something to help him get, more of the good and less of the bad? We'll see. This is where I want to bring you in, Stuck. There's the candle factor, as we all know. Since taking over in 2016, he's lost 24 times as a favorite. If that seems like a lot, it's because it is. That's tied for the second most losses as a favorite, only trailing the Miami Hurricanes in that time window. Last season, it was their game against Akron late in the year. They opened as a 10.5-point favorite in that game. The year before that, they lose in the MAC title game, as a touchdown favorite. So before we even talk defense, Stuck, a massive letdown has to be baked in, right, to your Toledo projections, at least for the win total this year. Are they going to fold as a touchdown, double-digit, favorite? Probably. Or do you think there's enough roster talent to insulate them from the annual candle meltdown?
Yeah, I mean, once a year you can pretty much bake on Candle losing a game that he shouldn't, which you should at least consider when you're looking at the win total. By the way, as always, shop around for the best number. Best number on Toledo, especially when it comes to win totals and futures. I think plus 250 out there for the MAC, over 8.5 minus 115. You can find out there for if you like the over. Uh, I don't trust Gleason fully. He's just so inconsistent. He's dreadful under pressure at times, and he just makes some boneheaded mistakes. The offensive line is more experienced this year. That was their biggest. They lost all five starters going into last year. They lost some quality guys. They go from 0 to I think like 45 starts returning this year. So they should be a little bit more experienced. They just didn't. They had no running game last year. I mean, none. So they had no balance. Anytime it was third and fourth and short, they couldn't get it. Wallensack just isn't the guy that you want to be your RB1. So Tranum could be the guy that unlocks this offense, especially if the offensive line takes that next step, because they definitely have the talent. You have Vandeross, who's I think probably the best receiver in the conference. You add Rudolph. So the pieces are there. This is the most talented team in the MAC, as it is most years. They're going to lead the conference in recruiting. They didn't lose any projected starters to the portal. Candle does a good job in that regard. They didn't really lose anyone that they were projecting to start. So the offense should be good. Gleason has to be a little more consistent. I think it'll help him if he gets that run game, which we'll see with Tranum. They definitely upgraded that room from a talent perspective, and that could unlock everything. Tranum revenge game, week 1 against Kentucky, by the way. The defense I have more questions about. Now, the defensive line, it's always deep. They're 4-2-5 dates, always deep. They rotate a ton of guys. So they do lose Alexander to the NFL. They lose, Butler, Holt, Reagan. So they lose their 4 starters. But this is a team. They four of their depth guys are going to come in. They still have talent there. Toledo's defensive line, always going to be good. I am worried about the linebackers, right? They lose some good ones in Barrow, Bolden, and then I think the guy who didn't start, Dixon, I think he's on the Eagles roster right now. Worried about that room. The secondary, it's Toledo. They're always going to be good. They lose Max and Hook, 4-year starter at safety. He's, I think, also on the Eagles roster right now. But you got Avery Smith at corner, probably going to be drafted next year. McNeil Warren at safety, probably going to be drafted next year. Alls, Bauer, this secondary is really good. When you're handicapping Toledo this year, who can run on them? That might be their weakness. Their run defense is something that I'm looking at. Their schedule's a joke. Maybe I'll let Duck touch on that, but I project them right around 8.5 wins. So I'm pretty close to market. I project them 6.25 league wins, which is the most in the league. If I had to guess, this is a team that gets to Detroit, but we'll see if they can avoid this slip up. Duck, do you want to touch on the schedule?
Yeah, I will. So the first two games of the season are going to be really good tests with Kentucky and Western Kentucky, but once they get in league play, should be 4-0 when you're factoring in Western Michigan, Akron, BG, and Kent. And then they've got this strange trip to Wazoo, which is really a unique spot that MAC teams don't traditionally have, which is this wild out of conference travel spot within the confines of MAC play. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that spot. But that's when you're going to want to see them go out and win if you're going over 8.5. Then you double back for that after the bye, and you'll get a descending Northern Illinois bunch. And then really the key game in the schedule for the futures for getting to Detroit will be at Miami of Ohio in week 12. The reunion with Daquan Finn in Miami of Ohio back in the MAC. And then they finish up against Ball State and Central Michigan. So it's really hard to imagine this group losing more than once in MAC play. So certainly we'll have every opportunity for Toledo, who has a top end talent in the MAC year in and year out. They have very little holes. Linebacker is concerning, but this is a group that should certainly take care of business. Minus the Jason Candle factor, which we know and love every year. It's always once a year he loses this crazy wild game as a double-digit fave that he shouldn't lose. But certainly would not surprise anybody if Toledo finds themselves back in Detroit.
Yeah, if they have a run game, that's what you got to watch early. If they have a run game, this offense is going to go to the next level. Their special teams have been a problem in sort of recent years, but since they hired a new special teams coach, they've been better in that department. But this is a clown schedule. Let's just be frank. I mean, it's the second easiest in the country per some numbers. They face 10 new quarterbacks. That's the second most in the country. They avoid Buffalo and Ohio, who are the other projected top three per some. And I mean, look at their home schedule. Western Kentucky, probably the toughest game. Then you got Morgan State, Akron, Kent State, NIU's in complete rebuild mode, Ball State, complete rebuild mode. So pretty easy to think they go 6-0 at home in the Glass House, which would probably be, I don't know, I mean, 7-8 probably feels like the floor, barring injuries with this team. But I'm pretty close to market. I'm not running to the window to bet plus 250 to win the MAC on Toledo. But if I had to guess, they end up there.
I got them upset in Kentucky. I think they will find a way to lose a head scratcher, and let's say they lose at Miami. That puts them 10-2. That's why I like the over. I also wrote up earlier in the season they were at one book 80-1 to make the college football playoff. That number's been bet down into the 15-20-1 range. At 20-1, I might take a flyer on it again, but I think that the right number here is to go over on the win total. All right, we're going to hop, as I mentioned, from a really good team to a bottom of the barrel team. That brings us to Kent State. They went 0 for last year, 0 for 12, 0 for 8 in the MAC, 300-1 to win the MAC this year. No thanks. Win total sitting at 1.5, over juice to -175. 4 starters returning, 2 on each side of the ball, 110th of returning production. How in God's name did Sean Lewis post 3 straight winning seasons in MAC play? Because the resources, as we know, are not here. The talent is not here. The coaching upheaval of having Burns fired for cause at the end of the spring is incredibly problematic. The university's investigation cited violations of the code of conduct, conflict of interest, credit card expense policies. So he's going hog wild on a school credit card. How can we get anything going in the positive direction with this program, or to feel any kind of confidence that they're going to be pesky and be able to pull an upset or two this season when on top of everything else, they likely got the worst run defense in the MAC in the last decade. When you look at what they were last year and what potentially the bottom could be this year, they got 5.9 yards per carry and 36 rushing touchdowns in 12 games. So opponents, they don't even need to get creative. Just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. You win. As long as you don't have a -3 turnover margin game, you're not going to lose to the Golden Flashes. So, Duck, I'll get you here early in this one. How low does this go? And do you think under 1.5 is just a free money glitch?
It was so bad last season for Kent State in 2024, coming off an already bad 2023. They actually showed a little fight and attitude in the first half of their opener against Pittsburgh, but really that was about all the fight and attitude we saw last season for the Flashes after losing on the field against FCS St. Francis. They had 3 shutout losses, 3 more games where they only scored once. Head coach gets fired for cause in the offseason. 6 weeks before fall camp starts and the defensive coordinator dips out to go be a position coach at FCS. I mean, it's just atrocious. The portal saw anybody who stood out last season bail, primarily defensive lineman Stephen Daly. Big play McCray is gone. Cam Olds went to the SEC. Top to bottom, this roster is just not an FBS roster. I personally don't have Kent State within 9 points of any FBS opponent on their schedule, and I have them greater than 28.5 point dogs at least 5 times this season. Really, truly defeating Merrimack in the opener is not assured. I would be stunned if they won 2 conference games. So I actually bet Kent State under 1.5 conference wins, which was offered at a major book here in the US. I would need 59.5 to back them in any of their 3 non-conference road games this season. The state of affairs at Kent is just so bad. They don't have the personnel. Coaching is middling. It's going to be really, really tough to see this team do anything better than we saw last year. The roster is completely depleted. Stuck, what do you see?
Yeah, I'm 7 points. I have them 7 points. That's about a touchdown worse than Kennesaw, and I might be too high on them. I mean, if you look last year, Kent State's, and this is a team that's lost 21 straight. They went winless last year, including a loss to their FCS team. Their strength last year was their wide receiver room. Well, McCray has gone to Michigan State. Floria is now on the Browns, and their defensive line. You mentioned some of them. Harmon's also, he's on the Vikings roster right now. And you have Beatty, who's on Wazoo. And both of those rooms got gutted. So, what are my questions for this team? It's everything. They're going to be terrible. Look, and the beginning of their schedule is brutal. Like after Merrimack, you got to win that game for this win total, which Merrimack is not. It's not a guaranteed win if you're a program like Kent State. But at Texas Tech, then Buffalo, then at FSU, at OU. One thing that I really pay attention to over the next month: injuries. Obviously, all just the fall camp reports, but especially now in today's day and age, teams, even in Power Five, Group Five, the depth isn't there. And like if they have key injuries, I mean, their winnable games are, besides Merrimack, are after their second bye, which is after Oklahoma. So they could really get decimated here. Now there are winnable games on this roster. I mean, on this schedule, you got Merrimack, you have UMass at home. Who knows how bad they'll be? That does come after a bye. You're at Ball State. You're probably not winning that game, but Ball State could just be a complete disaster. At Akron, it's the wagon wheel game. Akron's not eligible for postseason. Where are they at mentally towards the end of the year? I don't know. Then you have Central Michigan at home late in the year. Are they checked out? Are they really bad? They're resetting. Probably not going to win that game, but there are some winnable games on the roster. It is the MAC, so I can't go under 1.5, but I project, let's see, I project 1.8. I mean, to go under 1.5, they're over 1.5 is minus 180-ish. So what that implied 2.1, 2.2. So I actually do show a little value in the under, but I'm not running the bet under 1.5 minus 180. It's just not something I want to tie my money up for. I mean, if one of these teams is a disaster, there's quarterback injuries, they beat Merrimack, and then no thanks. I do show a little value on the under, but it's a pass for me. This team's gonna be bad. There's not much else to say.
Football season is here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming to the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from me, Duck, Stuck, and Colin, and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and his predictive analytics team, plus a million other benefits. And right now, BBOC listeners can save $20 off of their annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use code BBOC20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code BBOC20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. All right, from a bad team back up to the top, let's look at the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, 9-5 last season, 7-1 in MAC play. Big Arizona Bowl blowout of Colorado State. They're 6-1 to win the conference this time around. Their win total is sitting at 6.5 because they do have a difficult schedule. 5 starters returning, 5 of them all on defense. 128th in returning production overall. Everywhere you turn with this Miami roster, it's a but yeah, they don't return a single starter on offense, but they bring in DeQuan Finn, a ton of receiving help from P4 teams, and Kenny Tracy could be a workhorse back if everything, goes in the right direction. He stays healthy, they block it up front for him. The defense has a lot of snaps returning in the secondary, and it's a Chuck Martin and Bill Breakin, coach team. So they can be trusted to get it right, you would assume. But Matt Salopek was just like a heart and soul kind of guy. And it's difficult, even at the MAC level where there's a lot of these gritty middle linebacker, not necessarily the most athletic, but someone you can trust. He played in 59 games. He was 4 times all MAC Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. Bregan didn't mince words in the spring, by the way. I watched multiple of his interviews. He just kept saying, with all the new faces, they're focusing on working in unison, communication, avoiding, the big play. And reading between the lines, it looks like he's trying to avoid a big drop off. And obviously, this was the DNA of this team winning with defense. And the schedule is doing them no favors in the getting your feet wet department. At Wisconsin, at Rutgers, home against UNLV before a layup against Lindenwood. Then they go to Ohio, host Toledo, and go to Buffalo in a 15-day window late in the season. So that's bookended challenges. Top and, bottom of the schedule, I think can be very challenging. I still lean over, but I don't think necessarily that Finn is going to be this transformational superstar offensively to get him into that 9-win range with a conference championship. If we're going to poke holes in Gleason, and I think it's justified, certainly when you put him under pressure, he makes mistakes with the football, and you can say that he's boomer bust. But I think you have to apply that into your handicap of Finn and Miami being led by Finn as well. His final season at Toledo, 3 max starts with QBRs of 94 or higher. So you got the boom, you got the amazing play, particularly when he was using his legs, and then 3 starts with QBRs of 35 or lower. So he could kind of, go in the bag and throw you out of a game or just not seem locked in or being a willing runner. For whatever reason, it just wasn't always there from a consistency standpoint. So can they make this a dream Chuck Martin team again, play smart football, gritty defense, and elite special teams stuck, in your opinion? Because Dom Jobin could be the best place kicker in the MAC, so they at least have that going for him.
He could punt as well, although they did lose a really good special teams coach, which is noteworthy because their special teams has been elite the past couple of years. Still should be good. Yeah, the offensive line loses a lot. I mean, the top 13 snap counts gone. 6 to the NFL or Power 4. That's what happens. I mentioned this earlier. You lose Tracy to Minnesota, Virgil to Texas Tech, McDonald's on the Browns roster. Your offensive line, you lose 1 to Texas Tech. One's sitting on the Ravens roster. That's offense just lost a ton. There's no other way to put it. 1,500 rushing yards, 2,300 receiving yards. You lose a 6-year starting quarterback. That's not easy to replace. Now, Finn has experience, limited as a passer. His strength is his mobility. That might be needed this year because the offensive line might take a big step back, especially early on. So that could actually end up playing up for Miami of Ohio with his mobility. But yeah, they lost a ton. And then on this, the team 129th, 130th in returning production. So there's a lot gone here. On defense, you lose your 2 all MAC linebackers and Salopek and Wise. They did so much. They still have Hondrew and Trick and McWood there, but that group will probably take a step back. Their defensive line, losing Ugu, he's going to be impossible to replace for them. He did so much from a pressure standpoint. Their strength is the secondary, but they lost Strader to Auburn, their best corner. And so I'm still worried about the corner position. I'm not the biggest fan of Evans. We'll see if he can take that next step. But their safety position is really good. That's kind of the strength of this defense. They're probably going to be pretty strong when it comes to not allowing explosive plays. But there's some questions all over this roster. I project Miami at 6.45. I think their win total implied is like 6.3-ish. So this is a team I don't have anything on. They don't benefit from Kent or UMass on the schedule. They don't have Central Michigan or BG. That could go one of 2 ways because those are brand new teams. So do they end up being better or worse than expected? But no Kent, no UMass. And you mentioned tough start, tough finish. I think they probably just want to get through those first 3 weeks, work out the kinks, avoid injuries, then try to make a run at the MAC title. But I don't see any value either way in Miami, Ohio. It's a pass for me.
Yeah, Duck, we discussed this last week when, getting into Mac specific teams, how they handle paycheck games. Chuck Martin, historically, unless it's a Cincinnati logo on the side of the helmet of their opponent, he kind of mails in and goes vanilla in some of those non-conference games, wants to keep people healthy, doesn't want to put too much on film. But digging your hole, digging an 0-3 hole to start without putting up a fight, that also has a morale issue for a team that has a lot of new faces. You want to have some enthusiasm inside your locker room. What are you seeing from them?
Yeah, I mean, he's done it for 10 years that way outside of their non-conference game annually against Cincinnati. They have put less stock in the non-conference than most, and he's done a great job of rallying the troops and getting his bunch prepared for MAC play, where they end up usually performing pretty strongly in MAC play. I thought it was interesting what he said at MAC Media Days about the offensive line rebuild, which was concerning. He didn't go to the portal and really portal any guys in. He feels comfortable with his group. I feel like he kind of knows what he's doing regarding the offensive line, so I'm less concerned about that than maybe most. I think we'll see a little bit more from the tight end room this year, and the tight ends actually have some really good size and could provide some matchup nightmares for people in the MAC. So it'll be interesting to see schematically what they can draw up with some of those big bodies in the tight end room. But specific to the schedule, because I do anticipate that Miami of Ohio is going to start slow in the win-loss column. UNLV shuffled their schedule around, so now they'll be coming off a bye off that road trip. Wisconsin, Rutgers, and UNLV, you could project that they start 0-3. If that happens, and if you're a believer in Miami of Ohio to win the MAC, don't bet them now. Bet them when they're 0-3. Those odds will be offered in season live at multiple books, and you'll probably see a 950 plus 1,000 in their MAC odds when they're sitting there at 0-3. Then they could kind of get on a roll in MAC play and start to build some momentum. And then in the back half of that schedule, it really is a 3-game season with Ohio, Toledo, and Buffalo will be really key games for Miami of Ohio, not only in determining their win total, but how they perform in the MAC standings and if they end up getting back to Detroit. It's a pass for me. There's just too many unknowns for me to want to get involved in the win total. But if you do want to bet Miami of Ohio to win the MAC, I would wait till after week 3.
Let's turn now to the Akron Zips, 4-8 last year, 3-5 in conference play. They're ineligible to win the MAC this year or go bowling. 8 starters returning, 5 on offense, 3 on defense. Win total sitting at 4.5 plus money if you take the over. 91st in returning production, 58th on offense, 116th on defense. This APR situation is scary. Not only are they ineligible for postseason play this year, they get a practice reduction along with their level 1 penalty. And if they don't remedy the situation, there exists a world in which they're stripped totally of their FBS standing, according to writers. I'm sure there's multiple steps still to come there, but they got to get this going in the right direction. So I say this, and this is not a tongue-in-cheek suggestion. Can they just start targeting academic All-Americans to bolster their grades? Because this program has all of what, 4 bowl trips and 133 years of college football. So what's it going to hurt if you go in and get some 4.0 students to be a long snapper, a backup punter, bottom of the depth chart at linebacker? Like, just get this GPA and everything looking right. And you can go to FCS, D2, D3, NAIA. There's guys in there. Just open it up, look for the academic All-American team, try to get, the NCAA off your back before they throw the book at you. And then you know what else this makes me think of, Stuck, from a pure gambling perspective? I think the narrative right now going into the season is that everyone is going to assume they're going to be a laughing stock. They have nothing to play for. Yet they got a real quarterback with upside in Ben Finley. They closed 3-2 last year. He had a 9-2 touchdown to interception ratio, and the defense only really got pushed around by Buffalo late in the season. Can the offense keep them in games as they break in 8 new starters on defense, or am I just too sentimental, a little bit too glass half full when it comes to Jomo, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's interesting. Where are they at mentally in this season? I do show value in the over here. It's something that I'm considering. I think the under is taking money, but like the over 4.5 plus, you can find over 4 minus 120 out there. I project closer to like 4.8. I haven't got to the window yet though, because I'm just afraid of where are they at mentally. They're not eligible for the postseason. A lot of their potential, you got to beat UMass and Kent State at home late in the year. But are they checked out by then? You also have games at Ball State, at BG. Those are kind of winnable games because if you look at their schedule, I mean, we'll say likely losses at Toledo. We'll throw in at Bowling Green, at Buffalo, at Nebraska. Their other 8 games are winnable. Um, I'll tell you what I have them projected at. I have them within a touchdown, like they're going to be favored against Duquesne. Within a touchdown, within a touchdown, within a touchdown, within a touchdown. Small favorite, small favorite, bigger favorite, within a touchdown. So yeah, like within a touchdown in like 6 or 7 games and favored in a couple. Um, so I do show a little bit of value, but where are they at mentally? What is the reduced practice time due to them? The defense, I do have questions. They lost their top 9 in snap counts. Their offense, having Finley back, I think is big just from an experience standpoint. If Adams is healthy, he was really good a couple years ago, but he's been hurt at wide receiver. That's something that I'm watching. But yeah, they lost a lot on this defense, which is definitely a concern, pretty much on all 3 levels. The offense, it's going to come down to the offensive line now. Like the offensive line for Akron has been a problem for years, and they just can't fix it. And because of that, they don't have a run game, and then Finley's always going to be under pressure. Can Moorhead figure out the offensive line? I think he's a good coach. I think he's a good play caller. But yeah, I do show a little bit of value here. They also have bad bye weeks. That's something to keep in mind. They have a bye. Their first bye comes in November, and then they have a bye week in the final week, but they're ineligible for the postseason. So it literally does nothing for them. So that could end up really costing them. So a lot of questions here. I lean over. I'm still trying to get a read on what this team is thinking and where they're at mentally from some people that are close to the program. But they lost a lot on defense. That's definitely my biggest concern.
What are your projections saying, Duck?
I took under 4.5. There's a lot going on here, which I do not like. Offensively, this team is just terrible in situational football. 36% on third down, 26% on fourth down, only 14 red zone touchdowns all season for Akron. When they needed third and short or fourth and short, they couldn't run the football, and they were just so stuck in the mud offensively when that front 7 on defense was kind of keeping them in some of those MAC games in the middle of their schedule last season. The defensive losses are massive. CJ Nunnally no longer there. Brian McCoy is off to Oklahoma State. Antavius Fish leaves. A couple DBs are gone. I mean, there's just so much talent that you could have been proud of last year with Akron and the MAC that is gone. And then you lose AJ Norton, the receiver, and Jordan Simmons, the running back. So now you're kind of drawing on new pieces offensively, and you're going to try to work out the schematics of that. And it's just not something that I think we can really bank on. Stuck, you mentioned the schedule. And what I'm really concerned about with Akron is the schedule is exactly what you had said about how the team is really up against it in the non-conference, and so you're going to be underdogs, significant underdogs against Wyoming, Nebraska, and UAB on the road. And then you come into conference play at Toledo and hosting Central Michigan, who's an emerging MAC team. You're probably 1-5 or 1-6 after Miami of Ohio. So then where's the mental complexity of the team? What's the mindset? Why are you showing up for these 2 conference road games at Ball State and at Buffalo? And then once you get to the last 3 in the schedule, who really knows what teams are showing up and where's the motivation to draw from? The schedule is fascinating because Akron doesn't truly have a bye at all. Their bye on November 1st is followed by a Tuesday game against UMass, and then they conclude the following 3 Tuesdays, and they end their season earlier than any FBS team. So they truly don't even have a bye week. They get an extra 2 days. So no bye week, no postseason play. There's a lot of pieces missing. I have zero confidence whatsoever offensively. I went under 4.5.
I will say 2 more quick things here. They could beat Wyoming. That's such a big game for them and like set the tone for the season. Like what are they, a touchdown underdog in that game? So if they win that game, and you get that game for the win total because they get Duquesne and they play the bottom 3 in the MAC. So they play UMass, Kent, and Ball State. So like there's some winnable games in the schedule. That Wyoming game is huge. I will mention their special teams were really good last year. A lot of times in these MAC games, close games, going to come down to special teams. I spent a lot of time on it. Akron lost an insane punter who was really good. I'm surprised he's not. Maybe he is now. I haven't checked. He hasn't been picked up on an NFL roster. So they also lost their kickoff man, their kicker. their special teams could plummet, and that could cost them in a close game or two, which could be the difference. But they had a really good punter last year that is no longer around.
All right, we go from Akron to the Buffalo Bulls, 9-4 last season, 6-2 in conference play, plus 550 to win the conference this fall. Win total sitting at 7.5. So many starters returning on defense. We're going to get into this in just a moment. 67th overall, though, in terms of returning production, 105th on offense. Most teams, we start with that offensive conversation, offensive philosophy, but let's flip that around, Duck. The Bulls returned the ninth most production in the nation on defense from a unit that finished 22nd in TFLs, 27th in takeaways, and they only allowed 20 red zone touchdowns, which was the third best in the conference. But they still got worked at times by Ohio, Akron, Ball State. In a 3-game stretch, they allowed 125 points. So, a two-part question to get you involved. Without Sean Dolak, can they maintain that level of disruption while upping their, competition quality in terms of quarterback play that they're going to face? And on their side of the ball, can they also finally get some competent quarterback play, even beyond that, more of a game manager? Can Taquan Roberson deliver enough in their quarterback room for Buffalo to win the conference?
Well, interesting questions. Buffalo secured 33 sacks and 92 tackles for loss last year while forcing 11 red zone field goals and allowing 37% defensively on third down. They were able to bow up when they needed to. The run stop unit was exposed at times, and at other times they were very strong. Obviously, the loss of Sean Dolak is huge. He led FBS last season in tackles. Do you guys know who was number 2?
His teammate.
Red Murdoch. Red Murdoch, and he, along with 12 of the top 14 tacklers, return. And really, there are stars in the making at all 3 levels of this top quality MAC defensive platoon. I think you've got Kobe Stewart returning with his 9.5 sacks. Deion Crawford and his 8.5 sacks are back. Murdoch anchors the linebacker unit, which brings in first team All Ivy League Mitchell Gosner from Harvard. The secondary is more experienced and should run with more cohesiveness this season. In the back end, I think the focus obviously is to do better at limiting explosive plays in the pass game, but I think this defense looks ready to go by MAC standards. Taquan Roberson brings in a similar skill set to what we saw last year from CJ Agbana, and they've got a little bit of better options at receiver now with an established Victor Snow, and they get McMillan back from injury, which limited his production last year. I did bet Buffalo to win the MAC earlier in the summer. I also bet him in week 1 against Minnesota. Personnel is one reason why I like them to win the MAC, coaching another, but the third is the schedule. They really won the MAC lottery in the schedule. I've got them significant favorites against their first 6 MAC opponents. There's a very realistic chance that they start 6-0 in MAC play. So then for Buffalo, it comes down to 2 games that they host against Miami of Ohio and Ohio University. If they can win one of those 2 games, I think they get a spot in Detroit. To that effect, I can then decide at that point what I want to do with the future ticket. So I'm a big believer in Buffalo this season. I think they take that next step. What do you guys think?
Are you equally high on Buffalo, Stuck, or do you think there's? I mean,
I think
I still think
look,
there's a lot to prove with Roberson. Frankly,
yeah. One thing oh, by the way, August 23rd, watch party. Come to Chicago, Joe's. You don't even have to RSVP. We're going to be there from the start. All of us. We're going to be there from the start of the first game, Kansas State, Iowa State, all the way through the end games. Drinks on me. Just show up. We'll see you there. I'm looking forward to meeting some of you guys and seeing some of you guys again. But look, yeah, I mean, Buffalo's been bet all summer. I think they've been over bet a bit. Look, this is a team last year, and look, I'm a huge fan of their staff, and Limbo, I think, is doing a great job there. They're ahead of schedules. First year they won nine games. They won 8 games in the regular season. But let's just pump. I just want to pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, maybe Roberson is outstanding this year, but I mean, this is a team that did. If you look at their portal class, it's a bottom 5 portal class in the country. It's not a team that's bringing in a ton of talent. And last year, their 8 wins were Lafayette, UMass, NIU in overtime. They were dominated in that game, outgained by, I think, 300 yards. Toledo were outgained in that game. I think it was a Gleason getting benched game, or he got hurt. Akron, Ball State in overtime, outgained in that game. Eastern Michigan outgained in that game, and Kent State. Like, they probably overperformed. They were pretty lucky in the turnover department. So they do have a high floor. So I have them projected. What do I have them projected at? 7.7. So, which is close to what their implied win total is. I have them projected for 5.6 league wins, which is the second most. So by my numbers, the most likely MAC championship will be Toledo versus Buffalo, although that rarely happens. But yeah, they have a high floor because they avoid Toledo, and you get what? St. Francis, Akron, Eastern Michigan, Kent, and UMass. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that. This schedule is a joke, one of the 10 easiest in the country. There's continuity, year two of staff. The defense has some pieces. Worried about the defensive line room, and then obviously the loss of Dolak. It can't be understated. He's now with the Rams. They get Wolo back from injury. You hope that he gives them some juice inside because Stewart and Crawford are a good duo at defensive end. So I like some of the pieces in the secondary. Not in love with the pass defense. That could still be a weakness. The offensive line concerns me a bit. They bring back a decent guard duo, but I'm not in love with them. Right tackle and center is still a question for me. Wide receiver depth as well. Henderson is back. Didn't practice in spring, but I think he'll be good to go. He's a good running back. So this team's gonna be good. I think they're a bit overbought as of right now. I think there's other more intriguing options at the current pricing and market, which is what we want to talk about. So pass for me, although yeah, based on my numbers, it's going to be Buffalo versus Toledo in the MAC championship.
Quick plug for the Action app, Duck. What number did you get Buffalo at to win the conference?
8-1.
So that's a good reminder. Go ahead and follow everybody so you get those picks as soon as they go in. You can search for Duck, Stucky, Colin, myself. You can search for me over at Breeze over the Action Network app. All right, let's hop into a team.
By the way, road league games for Buffalo: Kent, UMass, BG, and Central Michigan. Doesn't get much easier than that.
There we go. Speaking of teams that we say their name and then it's followed by that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. The UMass Minutemen, welcome back to the MAC, guys. 2-10 last year without a conference, 65-1 to win the MAC this fall. Their win total sitting at 3.5, 4 stars, returning 3 on offense, 1 on defense, 122nd in returning production overall. The Minutemen were in the MAC for 4 seasons between 2012 and 2015. They won a total of 7 MAC games in those 4 seasons. This program is a general horror story for any successful FCS school looking to make the move. They won a national title at the D1AA level in '98. They then made 4 more postseason runs in the next 9 seasons. And then they make the move to the FBS, and they've gotten murdered. They've never won more than 4 games. And get this, they've only played 2 games in which they've entered with a winning record since coming to the FBS level. So, Stuck, you've made plenty of hay as a garbage man, picking spots to play teams like UMass. You even got a win over Diego Pavia in that dream season for New Mexico State, that 2023 opener. UMass won it. Do you see something that the average college football fan does not see with Joe Harasimiak as the head coach now? He comes in for the Minutemen, having built Maine into a big winner at the FCS level, one of the more challenging jobs to do that at. And in 2022 and 2023, he's a Broyles Award nominee for Rutgers as their DC. Or do you think this roster is just too far away to compete this fall?
By the way, speaking of MAC, I just got a text that Fannin looks incredible in camp. So shout out Harold Fannin, my guy. Yeah, look, UMass is going to be bad this year. They brought in a ton of transfers, new staff. You got a Rutgers assistant at DC. You got the old Northwestern offensive coordinator I'm not a big fan of. Look, their trenches could be decent for MAC standards. They brought in a ton. Like it could be a disaster. I like some of the bodies they brought in. We'll see if it works out. But this is a team that's bottom 10-ish in the country in returning production, so they're replacing a lot. We'll see how they go with a quarterback. There's a quarterback battle here. Brandon Rose from Utah. Hairston, who was the backup last year, played some. I think they're going to go with Jordan. I think he'll win the job. The Yale transfer, he's also a bit mobile. I think he's going to end up winning. If they lost their top 7 rushers as well, led by Hester's at Michigan, John is at Coastal, and they had Rocco Griffin from UTSA, who might be the guy there. They lost their best receiver by far in Kenny James. He's with the Lions right now. Their offensive line, there's only 20 career FBS starts, so there's a lot of moving pieces here. They like you look at their schedule. I mean, I project them close to like 4-ish. You could find, let me see, I project them, right around 4 wins. You can find best out there over 3.5 minus 125. I thought about it, but do I like with so much uncertainty? Is it something I want to tie my money up on? Probably not. There's some other bets that I have coming up here where I'm going to be putting my money where my mouth is in the MAC. There's 7 to 8 winnable games here, depending on how disastrous they are. But like Temple, Bryant, NIU at home late in the year. I mean, NIU's completely reset. BG at home late in the year. We'll see what BG is, but they could be just checked out if they're not bowl eligible and they're completely new. Western Michigan, completely new at home. And then you have at Kent and at Akron. Where's Akron at mentally? We know how bad Kent is. So there's a lot of winnable games in the schedule, um, as you'll probably hear me say a lot. But maybe their special teams can get a little better. They actually have a special teams coach. They've been so bad the last 2 years. They got a new kicker and punter from the Power Four ranks. So yeah, they lost a ton. There's only one starter back on D. They lost 9 of their top 10 tackles. I already talked about all their losses on offense, but this is a bad team. But yeah, just some potential wins on the schedule. The big game is Temple at home, week 1. If you like this team, you can get 3 now with them. Bet them week 1. I'm not running to tie my money up on UMass for the whole season, but lean over. My numbers do at least.
I've said this with a few teams during preview season. A lot of it can come down to if a team's pretty lousy, but I like the upside of one of the quarterbacks in their quarterback battle. It changes how I think about playing them. And I'm with you on Grant Jordan. I went back and watched as much tape as there was available, from him at Yale on YouTube. He's got nice change of direction as a runner. Like he's got the ability to manipulate the pocket, and he was also a late bloomer. So he comes in, and I think the best football could be ahead of him. Rocco Griffin could be the offensive engine. I could see it with him as the quarterback because I think you need to be able to throw on the run and be able to create outside the pocket with this offensive line situation. So maybe some situational plays for me if he's leading this offense. I agree with you. I'm not tying my money up for 6 months on a win total. Duck, do you see any situational spots to play UMass? Do you think that the market's too low on them? Where are you with them in the first year of a new head coach?
I think the win total's fair. I think shopping around for the best price is important. And also there's some variation in the market. You can find over under 3.5. You could find over under 4.5. So depending on which way you're leaning, figure out the VIG and see which bet is the best bet for you to make. But Mike Bajakian comes in at offensive coordinator. We remember those riveting, inspiring, dynamic offenses from Northwestern. Oh, wait, no, we don't, because that's never what they ran. They're going to run the ball. They're going to play slow. I like Grant Jordan. I think he's a great talent, and he could fit right in here with this unit, but he does bail from the pocket a little early, and he does have a tendency to just pick up 5 yards with his legs as opposed to allowing pass play progression to run its course. So I see a run focus with this group, and I see the clock moving a lot. I actually bet under in their week 1 opener against Temple, which was 52.5. I'd still like it anything 51.5 or more. I'd go under. And you might just find with a slower paced team going to try to establish the run. They have to use these first couple of games to try to figure out what they have on the offensive line with 7 guys that transfer in. 3 of them were P4 guys. The rest were FCS players, but you're going to have to try to find some time to see what you've got on the offensive line. So I think we'll see a heavy dose of run in the first 2, just to try to establish who they are with their offensive identity. So I look unders early with UMass, just due to the ball control style that they're going to play, and not excited about the uninspiring offensive coordinator Bajakian. So really, that's about it for me. I kind of a pass on the win total, but I will say this too: that last game of the season where they're hosting BG, man, if BG's not playing to make a bowl game, that could be ugly, ugly for BG. So it just could be something to watch.
Ohio Bobcats, 11-3 last year, 7-1, won the conference, won the Cure Bowl over Jacksonville State, 30-27, plus 320 to win the MAC again this year. Win total setting at 7.5. 9 returning starters back, 5 on offense, 4 on D, 54th in returning production. From Bill Conley of ESPN, QBs who accounted for 1,000 non-sack rush yards last year that are returning. You got Mateer at Oklahoma. You got Parker Navarro here from Ohio, Dampier in Utah, and Horvath at the Naval Academy. So can Navarro grow up even further as a dual threat quarterback, eliminate some of those risky downfield attempts? He had more turnover-worthy plays, 17, than big-time throws, only 14. And everyone except left tackle Davion Witherspoon must be replaced up front. Bangura is back after a year away at Minnesota, so he's really a returning starter as well. I think that you can add in, so you could make an argument that they have 6 returning starters here. On the coaching front, yes, there's a new regime, but they went with Brian Smith. They kept it inside the family. They retained their DC, John Hauser, as well. And they flipped the script on the portal after getting plundered last year. This time around, they grabbed DBs from Wisconsin, Kentucky, Ohio State, and Minnesota, adding them to the potential all-MAC DBs, Tank Pearson and DJ Walker. I think this could be a great pass defense from just a secondary perspective after they finished 50th against the pass last fall. If you believe this line gels, this is where I'm gonna, be bullish on a team. I'm gonna go over on the win total. I like this price point. If you can shop around, you can get 7-2 on them to win the MAC. Could they upset Rutgers on the road or rebuilding West Virginia at home in that rare G5 hosting a P4 team? I think they could. And guess who they played in that bowl game last year? Rich Rod. So their experience and tape is fresh on this exact system. Toss in no Toledo and Miami, Ohio at home. And I like the schedule. Like I said, I'm going over 7.5. I'm going with them to win the MAC at 7-2, which would be, a massive boost for the win total if they can upset either Rutgers or West Virginia. They're catching 11 at Rutgers. I think they'll be around a 7 to 10 point home dog against the Nears. I think they get one of those two. I like this team. I think that there's a lot made of coaching changes, obviously at the G5 level, but this is as, contiguous as it can be in terms of a coaching change. So that's what I'm going with. Stuck, what are you seeing from the Bobs?
Couldn't disagree more, baby. I'm
There we
going
go.
back
All
to that,
right.
doubling down on the Ohio fade train. This is my favorite win total of the MAC. Ohio under 7.5, good to -150. You can find -130 out there. I project them closer to 6.5 wins. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty in this schedule because they will face Rutgers, then they will face 11 teams with a new starting quarterback. That is the most, they're the only team that faces 11 or more new quarterbacks. So, quarterback's obviously the most important position in college football. A lot of these teams, are they going to be much better or worse than expected? Probably one of the highest variance schedules in the country because they're facing so many new quarterbacks. They likely start 1-3, and then they're probably favored in their next 7. And then they're a small dog at Buffalo. Now, I am worried, a bit worried. The one game that does worry me is West Virginia. It's a really good spot. Like West Virginia has that Pitt game that Rich Rod has circled. It was the disastrous '07. Then he left town. So I'm a little worried about that game, but I'm super low on this team. I think they take a huge step back. I respect Navarro and his rushing ability, but look, last year Tyus was elite at the running back position. He's gone. I'm not a huge fan of Bangura. Owen was so good, close to 1,300 yards at receiver. Was kind of his security blanket and go-to guy. I don't really think they have a true number one right now. Then their offensive line, you lose your 4-year starter at center. You lose your right guard, Atkinson. I think he's in the CFL now. You lose a couple other tackles, one to Wake Forest. So this offensive line, a lot of questions there. Then let's go to the defense. Their defense shocked me last year with how good they were. And I mean, that's what happens with it. They went, and credit to them, they got a lot of lower level players that all hit. And you talk about a guy like Owen, I could go on and on. But their defense was the star of the show most of the way last year. Their defensive line in particular was amazing. Well, who did they lose? They lost Weaver, their defensive end who had double-digit sacks. He went to Rutgers. McNaboe was great at defensive end. Walker Burgess. Henderson, their defensive tackle, he went to Missouri. They lost Rice, at another defensive tackle, to Maryland. Doggett. They got gutted, absolutely gutted. Now you're relying on, like, can they do it again and hit it? Like, you're probably going to have an Arkansas Pine Bluff starter at defensive end, maybe a Youngstown State, a Central Michigan castoff. This defensive line could be significantly worse. Then you at linebacker, you lose your top two. You're going to take a step back there. You lose Taylor, Leak. You lose 4 linebackers in total to Charlotte. Their linebacker coach, who I thought was pretty good, went to Charlotte. They all followed him there. I think their linebacker position is going to take a big step back. The strength of their team, besides the returning quarterback, is their defensive backfield. Could be pretty good, but they do lose their best corner to the NFL in parity. They still should be pretty good in the secondary, but I think they'll take a slight step down, especially because their defensive line is going to be much worse. The defensive line was so good last year; it really helped the secondary. So, I mean, you can even go to their special teams. I think is going to take a big step back. So, yeah, this team lost a ton, and I don't see, like, you look at what their incoming talent, bottom 10 in the country as far as portal recruiting. This is that their team outside the top 120 in both the portal and in recruiting. I don't see it. I have a lot of respect for Albin, who's gone. They were. I can't get to their number. I love the under here. I know there's some good things I like about the schedule. So I respect the call, and it is the MAC, but I'm selling the Bobs. And if I'm wrong again, so I was so wrong on this last year. If I'm wrong again, I will drive to Athens next summer. Last time I said this, ended up going to Murfreesboro, but I will drive to Athens and go to their camp and decked out in Ohio gear, and I will record it under 7.5.
All right, Duck, we're split here. Some of the things that Stuck brought up, particularly in the trenches, I'm not disagreeing with. I think that they have enough in other places to offset that. He obviously disagrees. Where do you see this team shaken out in the fall?
I think it starts at the top. You have the transition with a new regime, and it's just hard to replace some of the stability that was provided by Tim Albin and the coaching staff at University of Ohio. I like that Bangura returns to the program. They also had an offensive lineman that returns to the program after spending a year away. They have some pretty decent size on the left side of that offensive line. So if they can shore up the offensive line in totality. Now they're going to be leaning on an FCS player and a Division II player likely to fill the holes. So I imagine that they take a step back, but I could also see some of the tight ends, which they usually pack it in and use their tight ends to help in the run game. I could see it working a little bit offensively. It just seems like such a developmental year when you're looking at the defensive front seven and all of the production that was lost. You had significant players that are off now to the P4, and you didn't really backfill it with comparable level talent. And so your front seven takes a step back. I think that there's a significant cause for concern the first 3 weeks of the season, because I think that you could get your front seven eaten up early.
I think they're going to get crushed by Rutgers, by the way. I was hoping for a 10 there. It got hit early, sadly. I'll probably still be on Rutgers. Though I do hate laying big numbers with Rutgers and Shiana, who just will be up 10, and then they'll just be go into the most conservative game plan ever. It does scare me a bit, but I do think they get crushed by Rutgers early. Sorry, Doug.
Yeah, and I think you look at Ohio with
whenever like Calabrese calls out one of us, it's I always hear the other one. But yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to get a duck call whistle for the rest of the pod.
Yeah, Ohio defensively was just so good in situational football last season. Solid in third down, solid in the red zone. Their defensive havoc numbers were rock solid. But I just see that there's some just marginal decrease in what we're going to see with output from that team on the defensive side. It just looks developmental. They're undersized in the trenches. I just feel like this is a unit that'll just underwhelm compared to what we saw last year with with the great run that Ohio went on. So this is another case where I think if you like Ohio, let's wait for the first three to play out, because there is a very realistic possibility they're 0-3 heading into their FCS game against Gardner-Webb. And let's see what those futures look like there. Do they get to 570? Do they get to 6-1 to win the MAC with a poor start? And then maybe you could jump in and play it there to get a little bit better price and not be paying a premium, based on the fact that Ohio won the MAC for the first time since 1968 last season. So I don't see a repeat performance there. I think there's some wins kind of in the middle of their schedule. Win total seemed a little bit fair to me. I think swing games are Miami and Buffalo in conference play. So no real strong opinion on the regular season win total, but defense will take a step back.
Gun to your head, over or under?
Under.
There we go. All right. Ball State, the Cardinals, 3-9 last year, 2-6 in conference play, 55-1 to win the MAC this year. Win total 3.5, 3 stars returning 1-0, 2 on defense, 126th in returning production, 134th on offense alone. We discussed this team of all teams to discuss at the Phillies game, Duck, the other night, and I think it's because you think they're going to be dreadful. Is this a Potemkin Village in Muncie? Because are they all propped up by, the consistent mediocrity of Mike New, and people from the outside look at it as, okay, this is going to be a bad team. This won't be like, a 2-win kind of team. And then maybe they look at the upside as from a rushing perspective for Kyle Kelly as a run first guy. Does he fit with Mike Uremovich as the new head coach? His identity, is that what he wants to do because he ran so much at Butler? I'm like trying to talk myself into it, trying to fit together some of these pieces. I don't see it. Also, as a note, he was an assistant at NIU for years, so he knows the landscape. That's as much positivity as I can have on Ball State. If you want to go ahead and go in the opposite direction, please save me here, Duck.
Well, I think for it to work in the short term for Ball State, Kelly's really going to have to improve as a passer. We have limited data, but in 2023, he completed just 53% of his passes and 4.7 yards per attempt, which is very weak. 2 big time throws, 6 turnover worthy plays. And I think what you'll see is at Butler last season, we saw a lot of pistol. We saw some 12 and some 22 personnel. There was some outside zone, a little read option out of the gun, lots of QB power. And they do a lot of pre snap window dressing. So we're going to see tight ends flopping, some arrow motion from the receivers. There's always the threat of some receiver sweep or the little pop pass behind the line of scrimmage that teams run. I'm concerned of Kelly and his durability doing this for a full season. I'm also concerned about the interior of the offensive line just constantly getting blown up at the point of attack. And I'm really concerned about the pass receivers. Anyone with any productivity from last season is gone. If I'm defending this, I'm blowing up the A gaps. I'm walking a safety down to support the run, and I'm going to dare you to throw over the top, which he was ineffective in doing in limited action in 2023 before switching to corner last season. What's really concerning outside of that for Ball State is there are just so many defensive concerns on this unit. They did secure 20 sacks last season, but 7 of them were against Kent State. So if you factor that out, it's very, very little havoc numbers provided by the defensive front. The secondary was atrocious. You allowed 11 plays of 50 or more yards surrendered by the secondary, 62% completions allowed with 37 touchdown passes against, and your stop unit allowed 5.2 yards per carry over the course of the entire season. There's just very, very little to draw from. The front seven is massively undersized at Ball State. The secondary doesn't appear to be improved. I know they tried to backfill a little bit in the portal, but you're backfilling with FCS talent, fringe talent from the Patriot League and the FCS non-scholarship Pioneer Football League. And so I think you're just trying to replace some talented players, even on a bad defense, with fringe FCS talent. This could go really, really badly for Ball State this year. I think that what they're going to try to do is use this as a year zero and kind of rebuild and put the building blocks in place to kind of get a framework together for what you want to be. But I do not see it happening this year. Complete rebuild mode. You're trying to just replace talent that portaled out with really bad FCS talent. I faded Ball State in week 1 when they go to Purdue. I'm going to fade them against UConn, and I look to fade them throughout the season. I didn't go under on the win total specifically because I think the schedule has some gettable games depending on the mentality of some of these teams that they play. Kind of midway through their schedule, Kent State is not unwinnable. Akron's not unwinnable. I don't think
Kent State's
Western
not
Michigan's
unwinnable. That's very winnable.
Right. Yes.
New Hampshire, and Akron at home. Like that's you can see them getting 3 wins. Can they get one versus Ohio at home? Yes, I say, but or Eastern Michigan, and then that's probably what decides your win total. This team. Look, I loved betting this team with Kelly at quarterback a couple years ago because their defense was really good, and that kind of meshed with their defense. It's like run the ball, take care of it, chew up the clock, rely on your defense. And I used to love betting them the second half of the year when they went to this run heavy offense. I will say, if this year in the MAC, if you want to pull off some upsets, you want to make some noise, you want to run heavy offense because look at some of the teams we just talked about. Ohio, where is their questions? Front seven. Toledo, where are their questions? Front seven. Miami of Ohio. A lot of these teams, I'm worried about their run defense. Their secondaries, I definitely think are stronger. So maybe that works for them. But their defense just isn't there right now. I mean, this is a team that's bottom 3 in returning production, bottom 15 in incoming talent. So there's just they're not going to be able to just run the ball and rely on their defense. I mean, I will say their pass D can't be any worse than last year. Their pass D was so bad last year that who cares that you lose everybody? But their front seven, they lose some dudes. Their offense, they lost 10 of 11 of their top snap counts. Eight of those 10 transferred up. So they were coveted. They lost 4 multi-year starters on the offensive line. And you got to rebuild your front seven. You got a new coach who's also going to be the OC. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. I project them 3.6. So pass for me. But yeah, good luck to you, Duck, betting that Purdue Ball State game. Talk about 2 teams that are completely reset. I can't come up with a number for that game. You could tell me by the end of the year that I was 2 touchdowns off, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Northern Illinois, the Huskies, 8-5 last season, 4-4 in MAC play. They won the Potato Bowl in OT over Fresno. They're 12-1 that win the MAC in their final season in the conference. Their win total is sitting at 6.5 plus 135 to the over. Three returning starters, one on offense, two on D. 136th in returning production. That's dead last. First of all, boo, NIU. You're woven into the very fabric of the MAC. Michael the Burner Turner, Garrett Wolf, Jordan Lynch. You played in the goddamn Orange Bowl with a MAC patch on your shoulder. You beat Notre Dame last year, and then you turn around. Apparently, it means nothing to you. Now you're going to go beat that weird Eastern outpost of the Mountain West Conference. For shame. But you know what? This is it. Everybody gets to put in premium effort as you play your last season in the MAC and think that you're better than the rest of your compatriots here in the conference. The offense is going to be working with a new OC yet again. I think that's the third straight year with a different offensive coordinator. This time they're going to go with a D2 star in Quinn Sanders. He built a dominant rushing attack at Charleston, not the one in South Carolina, the one in West Virginia. That could mean big things for Telly Johnson, who averaged over 100 yards rushing per game in the Huskies' final four last season. But that was behind a veteran line that finished 25th in line yards. Now they need to replace four starters up front. Remember the name Chavaron Wright. He comes with Sanders from Charleston. He ran for nearly 4,300 career yards. He had 38 rushing touchdowns. Not in his career, last year, not a typo. So over the past 5 years, Sanders was a 60-40 run-centric kind of OC and play caller. But does the offensive line, kind of give him pause? Do they need to go in a different direction and be a little bit more multiple just to keep teams off of stacking the box against a green offensive line? We will see. This is where I get off of this ride because the defense brings in Rob Harley as their DC. Somebody help me with this hire. Total D the last 2 years at Arkansas State, 127th, 129th. They gave up over 30 points per game in both of those seasons. In 2023, he found a way to create tackles for loss, but they regressed severely in that department last year. And now he's got a defense that he's got to work with that's almost entirely brand new. They draw Toledo, Miami, Ohio, two of those three on the road. They're at Maryland and Mississippi State in the non-con, and they host San Diego State. I feel great about wins over Holy Cross. We'll throw in Ball State, Kent at home. That's three. Nice little floor. But let's even give them the win at UMass. Let's say they get to 4 wins. I don't see 3 more wins on the schedule. I'm going to go under on Northern Illinois in their last year. I hate this DC hire. Offensively, I think it makes sense to be this run centric. They certainly have been historically with this offense under Thomas Hammock, but I think this new coach is going to have some issues scheming up around offensive line that's not pushing people around in the trenches. What do you think, Stucky, about NIU's final year in the MAC?
Yeah, I don't look. They want to they going to play more spread out. They want to go a little faster too, which I don't necessarily agree with. But their defense is going to take a big step back. This team, they should have been in the MAC title last year. This team, they couldn't win close games. Their special teams was so bad they couldn't do a lot of little things. It's amazing that they won at Notre Dame, but their offensive line, look, they lost 4 senior starters that were solid on the offensive line. So they had a really good offensive line, and their defense was really good. I mean, you look at that defensive line: Haberman, O'Malley, who's now with the Titans, Gil Howard, who's now with Texas Tech, Taylor. You do get Williams and Williams back, which is a solid duo. But their defensive line, which was so deep last year, is definitely taking a step back. You lose all of your linebackers. And then, look, let's go to the secondary. You have one guy's on the Rams. You have another guy's on Missouri. Another guy was on Indiana. Their secondary was super underrated last year. This defense was really, really good. One of the best at the group of five level. You're probably starting like a D2 guy now, maybe a freshman or two in the secondary, maybe a freshman wide receiver. Like this team, bottom 10, 15-ish returning production. Did recruit pretty well, but I'm with you. I don't see this defensive coordinator hire. It's going to be kind of a similar scheme, but more aggressive, but he's never done anything for me. Like last year, man, their defense was so good. They should have done more with it. They had an elite secondary, a deep defensive line with solid linebackers. All of that is gone except their edge rush. And then your offensive line is Evan Malcor and who else? Like there's a lot there. 8 of them, their top 9 snap counts in D are gone. Lost 5 to the NFL or Power 4. 13 of the top 14 in snap counts are gone on offense. 2 to NFL, 1 to Toledo, 2 to Power 4. Yeah, I mean, I project them around 6, lean under here, but It's pretty close to what the price is when you include juice. Yeah, it's this could be a rough year for Northern Illinois as they look ahead to next year. I think that's maybe what they're focused on. Um, they probably go 0-4 on the road against Ohio, Toledo, Maryland, Miss State. So to get over the win total, can they go 7-1 in the rest of their games? It's doable, but I doubt they do. So I mean, you got San Diego State, Miami of Ohio at EMU, Ball State at home, at UMass, Western Michigan, Kent. A lot of winnable games in there. Can they go 7-1 with all this turnover? I doubt it. So yeah, if I had to, I'd go under. Duck, how about you?
I see it the same way. The guy drawing it up on defense, Nick Benedetto, is now off to Fresno State, and he really did
Huge
craft a
loss.
special defense. Huge loss. 27% on third down, 36 sacks secured, only out of 36 trips into the red zone defensively, only 16 touchdowns. I mean, he was just a mastermind in situational football. And now with what you're replacing it with, both in the guy scheming it up at the DC position and in talent, I think takes a major step back. The new offense that they're going to infuse is really a unique offense brought in from the Division II level. We're going to see a lot of 10 personnel, a lot of 3-by-1 formations. They're going to run some RPO and some screen game. It was almost entirely all short passing, kind of dink and dunk, a little tight end motion. We'll see. But a lot of short stuff, a lot of your 3-step stuff. I didn't see a lot of true progression passing out of the film that I saw of D2 Charleston. Hammock said at media days they're deploying this offense, but they want to throw the ball more. They're going to really be a high tempo unit. They're going to go fast, and he wants to throw the ball more and kind of get into some shootouts. Direct quote from him at media days. So it'll be interesting to see if there's
I
any
think that's like
action
about the
style.
move to the Mountain West, I think. And it just doesn't fit who NIU should be. I don't know. And by the way, the Barnes lost at tight end. They lost one tight end to the Patriots. Then Barnes left in the spring, go to West Virginia. That was a pretty big loss too, because there's just, yeah, this.
And Dane Partridge portaled out yesterday.
Yep.
So he's not
right.
going to be
I think they were going to need to
on.
rely on a bit.
Yeah, very much so. So I think the road games are going to be tough. Out of conference is going to be tough. I think this team struggles to make a bowl game. I lean under 6.5.
All right. I'm glad we are under on NIU. That's what they deserve from the MAC podcast here in their last season after turning traitors on us. Eastern Michigan now. Let's look at them. 5-7 last year, 2-6 in conference play, 20-1. Their price point to win it this fall. Win total set at 4.5. 5 starters returning, 3 on O, 2 on D, 95th in returning production. I made a big stink at this very program last summer. EMU was 117th in returning production. Samson Evans was gone. Colt Snyder was not a quarterback that I trusted. This is going to be a down year, the perfect year to fade Chris Creighton. Let's go under 4.5, I said. And then they win 5 games, and I'm not bitter, I swear, but they beat Conference USA champs Jacksonville State in double overtime, and they erased an 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter against Central Michigan, and then proceeded to lose their next 5 games. But at that point, they had already got to 5 wins. What I've learned is that at the G5 level, don't overreact to production deficiencies because you're going to have a lot of teams that are outside the top 100 in returning production, particularly the teams that have a really good coaching staff. And obviously, Chris Creighton has been a quality coach. He's taken them to 6 bowls. They returned both coordinators for the 3rd straight season. So I'm passing on this win total. I'm trying to learn my lesson this year. But there's still legitimate concerns you can point to in the trenches. You could look at the 3-way quarterback battle between Noah Kim, Cameron Edge, and drumroll, please, Jace Stucky. So Stuck, was this meant to be? You got a little cousin, competing for a starting job here. Do you see him taking snaps as QB1 for EMU this fall?
I think he's actually 4th, but yeah, if he wins the job, I will be betting. I think Salem is back in the mix too. I think if he wins the job, I will be betting Eastern Michigan to win the MAC. I will be obliged to do so. But yeah, don't fade Chris Creighton at a win total this low. Like he's probably one of the most underrated coaches in the country. They're not going to beat themselves ever. Their special teams is always going to be good. They're not going to be penalized, generally speaking, heavily. So this is a team that just doesn't beat itself and then is going to win these close games, which they're in a ton of. They're not going to wow you with talent. I mean, Creighton just doesn't have much to work with in Ypsilanti, but 73 of their last 97 games have been decided by 1 possession. So yeah, they don't bring a ton back. The quarterback battle is definitely worth watching. There's questions all over this roster. They also have the toughest MAC slate. They don't get to play Kent, UMass, or Akron. That's tough break. They don't play Toledo also. They also don't have a bye until November. They have two late buys. And that's why is that noteworthy? Well, this is a brand new team. Creighton's usually a good coach. He usually gets and they only have three games after October 25th. He's usually peaks late. Creighton's really good in November. Um, so that might end up hurting them. A lot of this will probably come down to like what does Central Michigan, Ball State, Northern Illinois, Bowling Green, right? Four teams that are like complete resets that are on their schedule. A lot of variance there for a small win total. Like if three of them are much better than anticipated, then it might be tough to go over. If three of them are worse, you're probably going over. Um, so I'm pretty close to market here, but definitely worried depth guys to step up on the defensive line. They lost some key guys in the secondary. Um, they lost a really good kicker, but I trust Creighton in the special teams. But basically, sum up, D lost their top four defensive linemen, their top two linebackers, who were both really good, their top three DBs, four of those nine to power four, replacing mainly with just depth and lower level guys. Their O loses your quarterback, your running back, your top two receivers to power four, three offensive linemen to the portal, one to power four, two to Southern Miss. O could be better if like the quarterback works out, like Kim and Edge. They have some talent and experience in differing ways. Pass for me. I would never go under on Eastern Michigan. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I learned my lesson there. Duck, where are you going? Which direction, or is this a pass?
I just got a lot of questions on the defense, losing the top 10 tacklers from last year. You really saw that EMU defense wear down in the second half of league play while allowing 4.9 yards per carry in conference play, 64% completion percentage, allowed 22 pass touchdowns against. It was just massive losses at all three levels. Peyton Price and Dylan Shelton were big losses along the defensive line. Zielinski goes to the power four. There is some competence along the defensive line coming back, but I don't see them producing even up to the level of last year. Linebacker losses are big. Luke Murphy and John come leave. There's some opportunities for some guys like the FCS guy who comes in from Elon, and Caden Bailey could step up. He comes in from Syracuse. I mean, it could be there. I could see a path to where their defense is okay. Um, Secondary group is probably just on par with last year. Daquan White and Quintavious Scandrett are losses. So who knows if they're going to be able to backfill there. Offensively, there's just not a lot of wow factor, I don't think. I don't know if I'm in love with either one of these two quarterbacks that come in. And just kind of one of those things where I think that Creighton squeezes as much water out of the orange as you possibly can, but he's really up against it from a personnel standpoint this season where the defense allows too many big plays, the offense doesn't get enough big plays. You find yourself in just bad situational football week in and week out. Sometimes you can pull rabbits out of a hat, sometimes you can't. I've got him a dog in 7 games. Uh, Reasonable favorites, 3.5 or more in 3 games and 2 flips. So win total seems accurate. I don't want to fade Creighton against the win total because I wouldn't be stunned if this team makes a bowl game, but they're going to have to pull 2 upsets in order to do so. Likely fades for me in weeks 6, 8, and 9 for Eastern Michigan. I'll probably do.
All right, it's time to fire up chips. Central Michigan, the chip was 4-8 last year, 2-6 in conference. They clean house from a coaching perspective. They're now 22-1 to win the conference. Their win total set right at that edge of bowl eligibility, 5.5 plus 125 on the over. 9 starters returning, 3 on offense, 6 on D, 80th in returning production. Coach Mack, as I mentioned, out of the MAC. The program under him, they just ran out of juice, but there's plenty of reasons for optimism here. Gone is the stale offense that never really knew what it wanted it to be. In is Matt Drinkle and his choice at OC from Eastern Washington, Jim Chapin. Top 10 in the FCS in total offense, 6th last year. Top 10 scoring as well, and rushing offense finished 5th in the nation at the FCS level. Seems like a perfect marriage with Drinkle, who is at Army and wants to run the football, has his roots in terms of coaching position group up front on the offensive line. Although it should be noted that Chapin isn't a triple option guy. His offenses were much closer to true balance, found a way to get a statistical monster at wide receiver last year, and Efton Chisholm III posted over 1,300 receiving yards for the Eagles out there in Eastern Washington. So this is a team in my eyes we really need to see in the flesh to get a full feel for their offensive strategy. There's, lots of coach speak at this time of year. I think that there's good educated guesses being thrown out there in terms of what personnel groupings and tempo we're going to see. But Labus, a quarterback, transfers Angel Flores from Northern Arizona and Marcus Beeman from the JUCO ranks. They're all battling it out for QB1. We'll see which one is a better fit. There's also issues on the line, which must replace four starters. Two transfers from Valpo and Columbia are penciled in as starters on the O line. Usually that's a bad sign, but when you dig into it, John Anunzi from Columbia, he's a mountain of a man. He's probably going to play guard. He was second team All Ivy last year. And as I said, keep in mind, this is Drinkle's area of expertise. So if there was going to be a spot for him to sprinkle a little magic, pixie dust on it, it would be the offensive line. Defensively, a lot of experience to work with. Jordan Kwiatkowski sticking around. He was massive, 14 tackles for loss last year. One of the best jobs by a G5 team to keep a key defender from entering the portal. Can the secondary create more turnovers? They have experience and some nice portal additions. I like Sean Cronin at DC. He did great work with the Army defensive line. They were always like bend but not break, and you could not score on Army in the red zone. They were first in red zone defense, so that's something CMU would be wise to emulate this year. I know the action team is high on these guys. I've certainly heard it from Colin, but an opening road of back to back to back, San Jose State, Pitt, Michigan, that's brutal right there. A Wagner win gets them started, then they get Akron, Kent, UMass. So I think 4 wins is the floor. No Miami or Ohio is also nice. And because it's plus money on them to get to 6 wins, I like the staff. I like the defense too much. I'm going to go with it. But I've already heard some people who are like, these guys are the sleeper to bet in the conference. Stucky, are you that enthusiastic, or is it more just a number thing where it's like you got them at 15 or 14 to 1 and 22 to 1, you got to pull the trigger?
Yeah, this I'm in on Central Michigan. I'm not betting the win total over. Like it could just go. It could just be a complete rebuild year, and they lost a ton. It's gonna there's new schematic changes. I do like the defense, some of the pieces if the defensive line comes together, the interior specifically. And they got to replace Kent at that corner. They lost to the NFL. But yeah, can they get more? They only had 2 interceptions last year. This is like the regression team. If everything's going to fall into place, it's with this team. And by the way, like it's the MAC. There's not that big of a difference between these teams. Like, oh, Buffalo, everyone likes Buffalo to win it. I mean, Central Michigan late in the year is going to be like a 4-point dog, 3-point dog at home, depending on how the year goes. Like that's just what I have it now. So but this is the regression team. Like last year, their injuries, they lost their top 5 receivers to injury. Their quarterbacks, they used 4 quarterbacks. How about turnovers? They were minus 18 in turnovers, or minus 17. The year before that, they were minus 7. The year before that, they were minus 18. They're minus 42 turnover margin in the last 3 years. If there was ever a team that was just going to get every bounce for the entire year, it's Central Michigan this year. And look, what did I say earlier? You want to come in, you want to run the ball this year against this MAC schedule where a lot of the top teams are going to pull off upsets. I think they're weaker in the front 7 than in the secondary. And they're going to do that now. Central Michigan does have some concerns with the offensive line, but that's Drinkle's specialty. They're not going to run the triple option. I've heard some people say that it's going to be more of like a power spread with some triple option kind of principles mixed in. You're going to see more 12 personnel than you did last year. But they lose a lot, but there's a lot of variance with this team. And if it does come together, I mean, look, they have a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, the first time ever in their roles at the FBS level. So you got to throw that. The depth is really shaky, which is why I don't really want to bet the win total because at San Jose State, at Pitt, at Michigan, like if there's injuries again and they wear down, and there's just a lot of variance with this team, which is why I like the upside of just taking a flyer on a 23 to 1. Shop around. There's like, I think some places is like 12 to 1. There's a lot of price variance in futures. Make sure you have as many books as you possibly can. But their road league games are Akron, Kent, Western Michigan, and BG. Not bad. They avoid Ohio, Miami, Northern Illinois, and Ball State. And guess what? New team late in the year. Of the top 5 projected teams, in my book, only 2 of the top 5 they're playing. I don't have Ohio there. Sorry, it's who I have for my projected finish. They get them both at home late in the year. Like, so if they want to make a move, like, right, BG, UMass, Western Michigan, Akron, Eastern Michigan. This is all I care about is the conference slate. Like, they could win three or 4 games to start, and then you got Buffalo, Kent State, Toledo. There's going to be an opportunity there. So a lot of variance with this team. But there's some things that I like. Fire up chips. I'm taking a flyer on CMU.
Duck, I want to throw this out here. When it comes to Chapin at OC, you bet a ton of FCS football. He basically kept them from being like a two-win team because their defenses continually stunk. Like they nearly, the last 2 years, they just consistently threw scares into AP top 25 teams at the FCS level. That was all him. If they're going to win, they needed to score 48 points to do it. And they were playing some of the big boy powers out west. Like, what is your overall feel for what he could mean to this offense from day one, even with a complicated quarterback room to sort out?
Yeah, I think he could pair well with the head coach. I think one thing that you saw from a descending Central Michigan program over the last several seasons is there was just such a lack of energy and enthusiasm, which was spirited by head coach Mack, who's no longer there after he retired and they parted ways. So I think you're going to get a vibrant energy within the program. We've already seen the positive culture changes immediately with Drinkall, and I think the OC Jim Chapin, you're going to see a really dynamic offense. You're going to see some spread power. They're going to use 12 personnel. They might even use some 13 personnel out of the gun, which is unique. They're going to vary their tempos. Sometimes they'll go lightning fast. At other times, they'll kind of take their time and be methodical. I saw a lot of traditional run schemes. So inside and outside zone, read option, some RPO game. I've seen some QB power, so it'll be interesting to see if Lagaz is going to be able to be the guy to run that. But they did run a lot of QB power. They ran some Wildcat where they had various personnel that were taking snaps from out of the gun that were not the quarterback. And then you had mentioned Chisholm, the receiver from Eastern Washington, who had all the receiving yards. It was almost exclusively underneath stuff. He was a great run after the catch guy. So get the ball out to him in space and let him go to work. And I think they have two guys, and Tyson Davis and Langston Lewis, who could kind of just jump right into that mold. So I think there is a framework together for what this offense wants to be, and the dichotomy between what it was and what it will be is not going to be as extremely felt. I trust Drinkall to shore up the offensive line. It'll be a work in progress, but I trust him to shore it up. The schedule is really fascinating. It's hard to bet over 5.5 on a unit that's likely to start 0-3. Although I think Central Michigan could be against the number gold. I think this scheme actually really matches up well with San Jose State and what they are unable to do defensively. So we should take a long look at CMU plus 12.5 in week one. Then they catch the Pitt Panthers before the backyard brawl. So it'll be real interesting to assess where they're at in week two and what that number might be. And then in week three, they go to the big house. Well, what does Michigan come off of? At OU. Where do they go next? At Nebraska. 33.5 or so could be a real enticing number on the chips in that regional matchup there. They're always going to really care about the Michigan MAC championship games. And so we'll see an added focus on Eastern and Western Michigan. There's certainly gettable games with Kent State, UMass, Bowling Green, Akron. I think that this is a group that could make strides and get better and get sharper and crisper in season. I'm just waiting on the future now. I could ease into the position and certainly be talked in at 22-1. But if they are good against the number, but maybe 0-3 in the record, does that future price get even better? Do we get 27-1? Do we get 29-1? Do people think they suck and we just can jump in and get a really good price and we see this team grow in season? 16-1, 13-1, 29-1, those are all significantly different numbers. So you want to make sure you put yourself in the best situation possible to succeed. We always preach that here at Action Network. Go get the future with the absolute best price. Then it gives you an opportunity later on if you want to squeeze out a little profit by hedging or whatever else. Put yourself in a situation to at least attempt to succeed. So, but I think Central Michigan's in for a really interesting season. I think the offense will be much more dynamic. I like some of the pieces they have on defense. Good uptrending program here.
Bowling Green Falcons 7-6 last year, 6-2 in conference play, 14-1 to win the MAC this time around. Win total at 6.5, but huge plus money on the over. 3 starters returning, all on offense. 121st in returning production, 127 on defense. That's obviously an issue to keep an eye on from the get-go. For the record, I think Scott Loeffler did the right thing for himself and for the program, just getting out of Dodge. I think last year was the year to break through. They had the best tight end maybe ever in the history of the MAC, a game breaker through the air. They had a veteran, steady-handed quarterback in Bazelak. Terrian Stewart looked poised for a monster year. At one point, they played their hearts out in near upsets of Penn State and A&M. They win 5 straight to set up a late matchup against Miami. They dig themselves a hole. They claw back to within 2 in the fourth quarter. It's 14-12, and bam, a 72-yard touchdown pass and another late tight end, a TD twisted the knife. We're now 10 years removed from BG playing for a MAC title. It's time for a new era and a new identity. And here comes Eddie George from, Tennessee State late in the spring window. I think he's already proven at the FCS level. It's not just a PR hire. He had his FCS boys playing really hard-nosed physical football. They made the FCS playoffs for the first time in 11 years. He was able to do it not just in a 1 or 2 year turnaround. He was there multiple years. He understands what it takes. So, Duck, you just did a great job of explaining some of the tempo, some of the packages, personnel, identity, overall aggressiveness that we're going to see for a team like Central Michigan. So, when you look at Bowling Green, what they want to do and playing that bully ball, playing slower, is it too early to tell if they're going to be nice under candidates in terms of totals on a weekly basis when you consider the fact that this defense returns 0 starters?
Yeah, interesting question. Eddie George comes in from Tennessee State. He started late in the process, wasn't hired until March 9th. Certainly, they're not going to be as exciting offensively as last year's rendition of Izigi Zumba. The losses are just stunning offensively. Harold Fannin had 1,555 yards and 117 catches. He was just such a safety net in that scheme. Terrian Stewart was explosive. He's gone. They lose the top 4 running backs and top 4 pass catchers overall from last season's offense. This year, the offensive line is going to be the strength of their offense and should allow them to kind of do what they want when they deploy their run heavy scheme. We're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. We're going to see a lot of running the football. 2-to-1 run pass ratio will not be out of the question here. We might even see some 13 personnel, which is not nearly as common. The tight end room for Bowling Green actually does have some athleticism and size. I think Florida transfer Arliss Boardingham could actually produce here as a pass catcher in this offense. Drew Pine, I don't know if I'm really wowed by Drew Pine, but it better be him because the backups are really, really bad. There's a significant drop off between QB1 and QB2 here at Bowling Green. So really not going to be good if he is hurt for any part of the season, which they've struggled with quarterback injuries in the past. So they certainly could be. Defensively, a full and complete rebuild. Almost all production is lost at all 3 levels. 13 of the top 15 tacklers are gone. Guys like Joseph Sipp, Brock Horn, Charles Rosser, Oladokun, the corner was really good. Major, major losses. I think Bowling Green struggles to make a bowl game this season. I betting under 6.5 was one of the first win totals I bet 2 months ago. And I think it's an under in the FCS opener. And then I look to fade this team against the Power Four teams on their schedule. There could be some value on Bowling Green once their perception shifts on them late in the schedule. They've got Kent, EMU, Akron, so that power run game could perform well against those groups. But I think again, it's a struggle to make a bowl game. I've got the ceiling at 6-6. I think it's closer to 5-7. And if they're not going for that 6th win in their last game of the season, that UMass spot could be really, really treacherous for Bowling Green. So under on the regular season win total for me, no shot at the futures. What do
Do
you
you
think,
agree a
Stock?
slow start before they really get it figured out offensively? And then, as Duck just said, all these defensive losses, every single dude with a capital D on their defense is gone. So who are you really relying on being those disruptive players that can up their havoc numbers even inside the top 100?
I mean, I project BG at close to 6 wins. So you can get what, over 6.5 plus 198 or over 5.5 at plus money, which I don't hate, but there's a lot of uncertainty with this team with all of the turnover. I mean, their defense was absolutely gutted. You have brand new schemes, brand new coordinators, brand new coach, 130th in returning production. I might talk myself into a little future though. It's just that I like the George hire. I like the violent approach for this year in the MAC. I think Ohio's overrated. Is this the game? Look, they have a bye before Toledo, and I think Toledo's run defense might be sketchy. The defense, they want to be more violent up front, and it's going to be a different attacking style. They're going to need George's kid, Achupong, who's been at UCLA and Miami, who hasn't really played. They're going to need him to step up. I like some of the transfers they brought in. This could go one of two ways. It could go completely sideways. But if it's a brand new team late in the year, they can definitely make a. I have them projected to be a favorite in 5 of the final 6. Can they get Ohio or Toledo? Like Toledo off a bye. I think Ohio's going to be terrible this year. It's the MAC. There's just not that big of a difference. And shop around. I mean, there's like 8-1 out there, but you also could find 20-1. I think it's circa. So at that price, like Basilak stunk. So am I a Pine guy? No. He wasn't there for spring either, and he's got to pick up this brand new offense late, which isn't really ideal. Um, and I don't know how focused he'll be. I don't know if he's traveling all summer or what. I think Pine comes for big money. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think this is a good approach to play this year. They do play the top three, but also the bottom three in schedule. Their late league road games are EMU, Kent, and UMass. They host Toledo and Buffalo. There's an opportunity here late in the year. Even though this team lost a ton, they went from top 30 experience last year to bottom five. I can't really talk up the roster, but from a variance perspective, a schedule perspective, how they're going to play, I think that fits. I little flyer 20-1 on BG.
All
It'd
right,
be real
let's
interesting to see how they play damage control too, because they're probably going to be 1-5 going into Central Michigan. So they might really have to rally the troops there in the second half of the schedule.
They're beating Ohio or Toledo. Mark my words. I don't know which one, or maybe both. They win both, and I'll be sitting pretty. Imagine they beat Ohio and Toledo, and they're favored. They'll probably be favored in six, their last six, right? Do they become a favorite against Buffalo if they're sitting there like after beating Ohio and Toledo, depending on what Buffalo looks like? I don't know. I'm in for a little bit.
All right, let's close up this conference. Western Michigan, the Broncos 6-7 last year, 5-3 in conference play. They're 14-1 to win the MAC as well. Win total at 4.5. Got to lay some serious juice on the over though. Five starters returning, two on offense, three on defense, 123rd in returning production, 132nd specifically in offense. Let me list my concerns straight away. Zero starters back on the offensive line. I think that is going to have a domino effect on everything that they try to do. They want to play really slow, but that also means they need to be efficient and they have to have some level of explosiveness through the air. And I don't see that with this quarterback situation, which at best is murky. Brock Lowry has all of 9 career pass attempts. The receiver room has some intrigue, but in terms of who they brought in, but if this quarterback can't be more than a game manager, how much will that even matter? If Brady Jones wins this job, by the way, I think that could be a good sign for the passing attack to be featured a bit more. Jalen Buckley, has been a stud in the past, but if this line stinks or if they're just consistently stacking the box against them, I don't think that's a great look for what they want to do offensively. I think they're going to get bullied on the ground, nowhere to hide, in terms of scheme or play calling the defensive side of the ball when you can't stop the run. The secondary could be very solid. Hearing good news about Jordan Thomas at corner. He came in the transfer portal. But we're looking at 0-4, and if that's the hole that they have to dig out of, can they do it with an offense that I think has far more questions than answers? At Michigan State, home against North Texas, at Illinois, home against Toledo. Woof. I see 3 wins for sure, but after that, I think they're going to have to overperform significantly to get to 5 wins and to cash this over. I don't see it. And if Buckley gets hurt, there's no more Nixon to come in as the Robin to his Batman, or sometimes they switch those roles. He's off at UCF, so I think this offense could fall off a cliff if he gets banged up, is inefficient, or loses time to the injured list in general. So I'm going under on the Broncos. I like the head coach, but I just don't see them being able to do it with the quarterback play and the offensive line being an issue. Stucky, we'll let you finish after all that optimism and positivity about the last team we just discussed in Bowling Green. How are you feeling about Western?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to market here. I mean, I project them 5-2, so maybe a little over, but I I like their skill position players. Don't forget about Cole Cabana at running back, the Michigan transfer. I think he could actually give them some juice. And I like some of their wide receiver transfers, Blake Bosman at tight end. Their offensive line is the question. I mean, they lost 4 good starters. 2 are on the Dolphins right now. And I'm surprised Gideon, their center, didn't get picked up. And their right tackle, Sherwin, was really good. And West and Cushy are both on the Dolphins right now. They're going to need 3 transfers to hit. They have 0 starts at 4 positions at the FBS level on the offensive line. But there's good size there. Like the offense has potential. I think Jones should win the job. I'm going to be paying attention to that. But there's 9 career FBS pass attempts at the quarterback position. They're more mobile this year. We'll see. I mean, this team was so experienced last year. They were top 15 in the country. Now they're outside the top 100. The defense, you mentioned the secondary, like the safeties they got back. I'm worried about the cornerback. They're going to hope that Thomas, who was good at Eastern Kentucky, they better hope that he's good because he's going to be their cornerback one. They lost Kone to the Ravens, and Washington's gone. Russell's gone. So their cornerback position is something that I'm watching. Linebackers, they lose their top three. The defensive line was gutted. Um, they lost 11 of their 13 sacks, but they weren't great last year. So there's a lot of questions here. Their road league games aren't awful. UMass, NIU, EMU, Miami. They host Ohio and Toledo, but they don't get Kent, Akron, which doesn't hurt. They're going after like Power Four castoffs. Um, and if they hit, hey, maybe this team has something. But for me, this is a pass. I don't have really a hot take one way or the other. Watching the quarterback battle, watching how the offensive line comes together, um, definitely going to be a team that I keep my eye on down the stretch. They lost some key guys in the spring portal on defense that really hurt, like Jefferson to Louisville, Nelson and Green on the defensive line to Vandy in Memphis. So, yeah, really worried about the defense.
Duck, what do you see? Let's start with the quarterback battle. Do you have, any info in terms of who's going to come out of that? And if it ends up being a timeshare or they're trying to figure out that non-conference schedule, well, they're getting their what kicked in the dirt by some of those paycheck games. Do you think they're going to have any positive momentum or be healthy coming out of the non-conference schedule to take advantage of some of these fortuitous scheduling spots?
I mean, hard to build momentum when you're likely 0-4. I think the major question is who's going to replace Hayden Wolf at quarterback for Western Michigan. And we just don't know. It's a battle. It's a kind of a neck and neck race, and there's very little experience coming back at all. They want to pass the ball a little more, so they're going to put more on the shoulders of either Brady Jones or Brock Lowry. Maybe. I think Buckley can show some things this year, and I think he's a pretty decent MAC running back, but the depth behind him is lacking. They actually have a couple pretty decent receivers. Christian Leary comes in from Georgia Tech, had some highlight reel catches against Miami a couple years back. The offensive line seems to be decently shored up. I think you're going to have maybe a couple guys that you'll need to really step up and probably play above their belt class, which, yeah, maybe that could happen. And then Bosma's always a really solid third down and red zone target. So there are a couple of pieces there, but just going to be a schedule that is not conducive to really gaining a lot of momentum. It's going to be, again, hard with the non-conference schedule the way it sits. Minus the FCS game, and then you got Toledo, Miami, Ohio. Just not. I mean, it's a good coach, and I think it's a coach that knows what he's doing with his program. But I just don't see a lot of spots where it's going to be piling up the wins. I think it's to try to go over 4.5. You've got to win your last two probably on the road. Tuesday night MAC games can get wacky, so it surely could happen, but not a real strong opinion for me either way. Just not a lot for me to love about this year's Western Michigan group.
O-line, they need the depth is really shaky. Something to watch from a betting perspective. Like they're first of all, they need the transfers to hit. Like they're gonna need like they got some Big Ten guys that just haven't played. So how do you project them? It's difficult. Like they need Anderson, they need the kid Whiteneck from Illinois, probably need Vaughn from Wake Forest, all to start and contribute. You got Hoffer back at left guard. But if there's some injuries or those guys aren't hitting, the depth is really shaky, and then the offense could completely crater. But that's quarterback battle, offensive line is really what I'm watching because they're going to need the offense to be good because this defense, it's not going to be able to carry them.
All right, let's go around the horn quick before we wrap the show. Who do you have in your MAC title game? Who do you have winning it? It's a little bit boring. I know that Candle will give me pause and lose one game on a Tuesday or Wednesday night that he shouldn't, but I'll go ahead with Toledo winning the conference, beating Ohio, who Stuck doesn't even think will get to bowl eligibility, but it's nice to stick my neck out there a bit. I didn't think coming into the show that it would be such a polarizing pick, but yeah, I'm going with the Bobs. I think Parker Navarro in a league that, he could sneak into the top four quarterbacks if he can cut down on his turnovers. Love what he does with his legs. So I'll go Toledo over Ohio. Stucky, who do you have getting to Detroit and who's winning it?
This is subject to change because I still there are a lot of camps, injuries, so this might not be my pick in the MAC manifesto. But my favorite to win total is Ohio under to go right in the face of you. Flyers on Central Michigan and Bowling Green. So as of right now, I'll say Jason Candle does not have any upsets this year until Ford Field, Central Michigan upsets Toledo in the MAC championship. Fire up chips.
Love to see it. Duck, it's going to be hard to top that. What are you seeing in your crystal ball here?
Well, favorite win totals are Akron under and BG under. MAC championship game, I've got Toledo and Buffalo getting to Detroit. It's a real
Boring.
flip after that. It's boring. I know. I don't trust Candle to win uh, the games that he should necessarily. So I think Buffalo's going to win the MAC this year. I'll call it. Buffalo's going to win the MAC. I think CMU will surprise though. CMU will certainly surprise some teams this year.
All right, guys, the G5 is now wrapped. We got it on ice. Go through your podcast feed. You can listen to every single team in all 5 of the G5 leagues wrapped up, and a little bonus with Oregon State and Wazoo in one of our episodes as well, which means on deck are the Power Four. Colin and Stuck are going to strap into the mothership and take you through every single team. Hopefully, they can make it through the ACC episode that always goes 3.5 hours every year. That's a labor of love, but it's going to be very exciting. Some of the episodes are going to be broken into multiple pieces. Be sure to check that out, and also look for some body language. I think that's what you have to go through on those YouTube channels. You can see it sometimes. The words may be there, but maybe the body isn't convinced of some of the win totals, particularly with Colin. So go ahead and watch there. Subscribe, rate, review on YouTube. We're still trying to grow that channel. And as Stucky said earlier in today's show, we are going to be in Chicago, Illinois on August 23rd. Joe's on weed for a week 0 watch party. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to do anything online. Just be there at 11 a.m. for the kickoff. We got Farmageddon from the Emerald Isle, K-State, Iowa State. What a way to start the season. We're going to be there for 15 hours cutting it up. We would love to see you there talking bets, firing in futures, week 1 plays, and the drinks will be flowing all day and all night long. The whole crew is going to be there. Colin, Stuck, Duck, and myself. Thank you so much for listening. For Stucky and Duck, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Big Bets on Campus podcast. We'll catch you next time for more preview action.